chopping strawberries and putting the pit, whatever these are, in the compost. And I feel like I'm on a food show. Now, ladies, you put your strawberries in a bowl. You want to take one and taste it. Pretty good. Make sure it's going to be good for your guest. Now, put the rest in the fridge. Now, ladies, we've set the table. We have our strawberries. We have our prepared California rolls, our salad, avocado, cucumber, and what else is there? What is, oh, something else, I don't know. Humpty Dumpty was my first poem. Just enough magic for a 5-year-old boy in 1950 when Harry Truman was President of the United States and I argued with our neighbor Ruth Eddington about jet planes, explaining that they didn't have propellers. My mother recited Humpty Dumpty out of a book of nursery rhymes. We sat cramped on a faded brown couch with busted springs in the living room of our yellow stucco house on Rosewood Avenue in Los Angeles, a couple miles from Venice Beach. I loved the sound and the economy of language. All up and down our block, I'd walk along reciting Humpty Dumpty to the stucco facades of the neighborhood houses. I cracked my head on the concrete front porch of the house directly across from our own while I played with the neighborhood kids. The porch had a green wooden railing on which I tried to walk, one foot in front of the other, arms outspread for balance, imitating a circus tightrope walker I had seen on a television show. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, not all the king's horses or all the king's men could put Humpty Dumpty together again. And I guess the thing about doing a memoir, it sort of makes sense when you're 67, only a few months from being 68. I mean, because you never know what's going to happen at any time, but you know it even less when you're this age. You know, what's going to happen tomorrow? Is there going to be a tomorrow? I just hope that if there isn't, that there really is some kind of heaven or paradise someplace. And I think what I'd like is to, when I go, is to find a cafe in one of those old cities like I talked about. This time it'll be way up in the sky and you can sit there. And the thing is, you never get bored. If you get bored, it's not heaven. Then maybe it's purgatory. And if you get too bored, it's like hell. But if you're sitting there and having one cappuccino after another and everything's just fine for eternity, that sounds cool. Here's the second book Bukowski ever did called Run with the Hunted. It's very frail. The cover's fallen off. The back cover isn't there. But it has something very lovely in it for me, and that is when I was Neeli Cherry, to Neeli Cherry, I hope that I have awakened some of your young sleep. Charles Bukowski, 7/23/62. P.S. You should have heard some of Frankie Roosevelt's fireside chats. God, A.D. 1932 on. And then he has a little note here, corrections to poems, pages 9 and 11. Another book that had a great influence on me, and a writer who's had a big influence on me, is Jack Hirschman. And we became good friends over the years, and since 1974 have shared this space, San Francisco. And probably going to hook up with him later tonight at Specs, where we always meet. But one of the persons who really, after I got to know him, really taught me a lot about tightening up the line and about focusing was Bob Kaufman. Bob Kaufman was born in New Orleans in Bayou St. John. He came from a very incredible family, and I know that because I met some of his sisters who came up to see him in the 70s, and they were just the most elegant women I ever met. So I met Kaufman when I was about 29, 30. So a lot of who I was and who I am was already formulated by then, but it was something. It was amazing. I think within the first few minutes of meeting me, he was reciting from Eliot, from the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, "Let us go then, you and I, while the evening is stretched out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table." And those are the hand gestures. And about a minute later, he was doing, from Wallace Stevens, "Music then is feeling, not sound." Here on my street, trees drop their tears onto automobile hoods and coat the window glass. It happens all the time. I murdered the weeds out front and swept up the remains. Our neighbors did the same. It happens to be a mournful world. But Andover thinks in joyful stanzas. The anti-Semitic woman 3 doors away finally died. No more gray shawl, no more black coat, no more the Jews, she would whisper, they are coming for us on Andover Street. There is a stately raven balanced on a wooden pole, held aloft by a clown in fading Levi's and big red nose. Figure it out. Who owns the trees and the squirrels in the yard? What do we do with the remains of the ones who were here before? Tamerlane and his wife, for example, their toddler, now middle-aged. This is a rhapsodic street where horns blink, a street for light mist and torn branches. Drivers who meet, neither will yield uphill or downhill. This focal point, our American planet of simple dreams, began here on my street a long time ago when lost tribes congregated and erected a street sign.
Chairman Adam Schiff praised the ambassador tonight. I think she is a courageous example for others, and I think all the members were extraordinarily impressed with her testimony today. We will continue with other witnesses, notwithstanding the administration's consistent efforts to obstruct our investigation. Now, more diplomats are going to be heading to Capitol Hill next week to testify in this impeachment inquiry. Fiona Hill, former top aide to Trump on Russia and Europe, considered a hawk. She is scheduled to be there.
This is the manuscript, my new manuscript with Lithic Press, which Kyle will be working on, and Danny Rosen. And it was very pastoral, and it's become less so, which means it's going to be sharper, it's going to be more acerbic, and all that kind of thing. And yes, I can read a poem. When my father was a child in Philadelphia on Cherry Street, he taught me the rules for an axe, how to split the mind down to Plato's fairy kingdom of faulty leaders. Take the neck of your axe, slide the planet along grains of sight, use your intelligence, move to California, let those chips fly, sell the newspaper on Hollywood Boulevard in 1923. There were rules for bringing coherence to the conversation. He became Time's little woodsman. He pried open a forest. He froze to death in the grim Northwest, struggled for his axe, huddled in a boxcar, took my arm and propped the axe. Feel the long log with your mind. Feed destruction. A storm is brewing. My child father despised his father. He saw him dive onto the sidewalk like a wood chip. 1926. What does it matter if men live or die? My father taught me how to hike above screaming trees way out west, when to measure beatitude and love. So that's an important poem for me, coming to grips with my father, who was a great guy with the axe. He could make those chips fly, and we did so on many camping trips. That was our vacation. Never a motel, never a hotel. Always out in the woods.
Wait, don't go. I'll keep you on the street that's straight and narrow. With all my friends, there's another kind of love that keeps you swinging in the park, not from the trees, in the breeze, in the dark.
What's happened to me, I talked to Jesse about it last night. My feet are growing numb there's no way to stop it. Both sides. I realize I'm having to face it. I was a big walker. Big time.
I'm running to the throne, I'm screaming, but I'm all pushing through these dancers, I wanna yell. I'm running to the throne, I'm screaming, but I'm all alone.
In the last few days, my poems have changed, and most poets I know actually tend to like the things they've written just now better. I think so, you know. I know Ginsberg felt that way. I also knew he suspected what a lot of us felt, that he wrote his greatest stuff with Kaddish, Howell, the poem America, and he did that in the 50s as a young man, and that he never rose to that height again. But the fact is he did rise to that height. Pound, I think, was very consistent. Eliot was very consistent. Yeats only got better as far as I'm concerned. And in his last years wrote his greatest poems, although the earliest ones are also great. So I think of Eliot, Pound, and Yeats as three of the greatest poets of the 20th century. I was looking at this little pamphlet, A Kind of Beatniks. A Kind of Beatniks, photographs of a North Beach era, 1950 to 65. Michael, wait. We're really organized here. Michael McClure, Philip Lametia, John Wieners, and David Meltzer. Only Michael is alive in his 80s now, but all of these are great poets. Wieners may be the greatest of the whole Beat period poets, and Philip Lametia was a great teacher, poet. David Meltzer was one of my close friends. He was the youngest poet in the New American Poetry. So the house is filled with stuff like this, little documents of a period. But anyway. The war with her son. So that's in it. I didn't give it to UC because to the archives it means a lot to me, but I suppose I will eventually. I would say that 70% of the notebooks have a lot of drawings in them. But the conflict between the pen and the computer is interesting. I definitely write better with a computer, and I can edit better with a computer. But I think there's things I can find in the handwriting also that are good. And one of the things is, do I print or do I write? You know, and when I print, it's one thing. When I write the old way, it's another thing. It just gives another dimension to things. But I am a slave to the computer. I was hoping to not be a slave to the computer, but I really am. And I write a lot of poems on my smartphone, which seems insane, but I can do it. I do them by voice. I have my literary heroes. They have comforted me through the journey and have been of help in the long apprenticeship that has been paying off, at least psychologically, as I prepare to go to the next place that the Creator has prepared. Homer is the great genius who I look to at moments of panic. He's always seems to be present and at least able to help me realize my own resources. Then I'd have to say Dante Alighieri is the next great figure along with Shakespeare. They walk over the storm and walk on water and walk into the fire and come out unscathed. I guess they were pretty remarkable human beings with capacities to shake the rhythm of human consciousness. Though they are all of their own language, I love their respective lands. There is an element of them that is absolutely universal. I think that is why I love them so much. It's the reason I keep going back to the midway journey of my life and why ghosts and memories haunt me. Dante, Hamlet. Our favorite poets do not have to be this historical. They do not need to be luminaries. They could be unknown, anonymous, faulty in one way or another, morally or spiritually corrupt, and they can be politically engaged or unengaged. Who are your favorite poets? People ask. That's pretty easy. I always like my own poetry, most of all. This is likely a terrible thing to say. Basically, to be hyper means you can't concentrate for any real amount of time. It means that you can't sit there in the classroom and listen to the teacher and take your notes as well as others can. You're squirming, you're moving about, you want to move on. Enough already about this date or this fact or whatever. Let's move on. That's what being hyper is. Hyper is you're on the bus, you're sitting there, and you have to move, all these things. And it's a burden on people who have hyperactivity or attention deficit disorder. Think of that, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I think that's what it is. And so you have you just can't sit there like other people. And that was sort of my ruination in terms of learning math and learning grammar, neither of which I really learned in any sense, I went to the Zen Center in San Francisco one day. There's about 150 people in the auditorium, and the Zen master, Baker Roshi, is sitting on the dais. And suddenly he says, "I know who you are," pointing to me. "You're the great wiggler." He said to me, because I'm sitting there wiggling. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I want to be the Roshi, the teacher." And he said, "Come up and take my place." And I said, "Wait a minute. I have the desire to be the Roshi, but I don't know if I'm ready yet. I really need to work at this and find out how I would handle it, and then I could do it. And he said, he gave this homily on how honest I was. It's as if we had rehearsed it beforehand, how we had planned this out, but we hadn't. So he said, if you can come here and learn to sit for 2 weeks, for 45 minutes, I'll make you the Roshi. So I came to the meditation hall and I sat once and I couldn't stand it. And I left. Even now, sitting here, I want to move on. It's like that, you know. So poetry can provide one with a lot different than a novel. I've written several prose books. I've written a couple novels that are sitting around, and I've written prose books that have been published. And that takes a certain kind of concentration. I don't know how I was able to do it. But I know when I was giving a poetry reading at the Walt Whitman House in Huntington, Long Island, somebody in the audience asked, "What is your work schedule?" First of all, I said, "Work? What's that?" Then I said, "Schedule? You gotta be kidding. I just sit down and write whenever I can." Now recently, I was telling Kyle, I learned that I could get up at 3 in the morning and write a poem, and it comes out really nice because there's nobody around me. You feel like the world is a wall that's coming at you. It's a good wall, and it's walling out all the noises. And so I sat down last night and I thought, the oldest of the known old. And what happened was, it came up with this poem, and as usual, it just flowed out of me. We were born to follow sundown and to plant lettuce. We're torn in half by metaphysics and use philosophy to discover our roots. Do we not celebrate the hoe? Have we not come to cherish fields remaining? We need rich soil, no simple matter. Life may grow cheap, men might be harvested, compassion boxed and sorted. The bristlecone pine I touch is 4,850 years old, give or take a few years. It holds so many winter storms and summertime soliloquies, oldest of the known old, out of the jeweled bands, older than a jazzman from a Louisiana bayou blowing his horn. Tough, rough, rowdy, sacred wood or sun-faded terrain. This levity of land spread out over the mesquite, branches twisted, centuries of travail and desire fed on chanting rips of dirt. Bristlecone pine, you need not change your life. Apollo is a mere statue. Men are not important. The pottery damaged. Here is a road, but so what? Did you not take charge of our toys and weapons? We could cut you down and make a bonfire here on the basin. Men are powerful and deranged. They sit in cubicles and invest. They destroy so many things, and finally, everything. The pine tree has no comment. It is so old, punished by wind, rain, snow, hail, in the burnt ember of color where vultures find their prey and silenced clouds reign. So I like when I'm writing at least when I'm writing with a fountain pen, I hear the words, literally, large, long, love, leap. So it brings me close to the idea that I'm writing on stone or papyrus, and it makes me very happy. Makes me feel very antique. It also relates to the fact that when I first wrote, like a lot of us, we started with pencils, lead pencils, Eberhard Faber. They had the erasers on it, and in my case, I chewed the pencils right to the lead and ate the erasers.
Is poetry always sincere?
I think poetry works towards sincerity. I don't think it necessarily works toward the truth, but it works toward an idea of the truth. It works toward a conception of trying to say things that hold true. But to say that poetry is about truth, I don't think I can say that. Nor is it about beauty. Those are sort of byproducts.
Yeah, Gregory thought that some of his best poems were lies.
Yeah, well, Nietzsche, the poets lie, and Plato wants the poets to stay. They can't stay the night. They have to leave the Republic. Because poets are, if they're speaking the truth, it's their own truth, and your own truth isn't necessarily somebody else's truth. To somebody else, your truth may be a lie, and I think one must be cognizant of that. At the same time, I think there's something at the center of poetry. My own feeling is there is something at the center of poetry, at the center of creation, that is beyond, to steal from Nietzsche, beyond good and evil, beyond truth and beauty. I actually believe there's a force beyond truth and beauty and beyond good and evil that we feed off of. This is sort of a concept I've been developing, and it's a need for a primary source. So I believe there is a primary glue to the universe, and therefore to ourselves, since we seem to be reflections.
Where will I be, coming back from hot countries? The young men on this terrace above the worms in the North American Club, where English is a clutch for madness. That I came and lit a candle at a memorial plaque inscribed to the first youth who died in the never-ending battle. I had this relationship when the sun came to an end, when the National Geographic magazine fell up in flames. This age of penicillin, playing cards with death. Will I be cured? Will death come to a mad finish over the brink of language to where I am your friend, late afternoon, a golden glow, walking home from school, the future of your native land?
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So.
Very quickly, 6th Avenue led right down to the Green National Palace. It's kind of decaying old, kind of quote-unquote banana republic kind of structure, the sinister-looking building. And 6th Avenue is where there had been a kind of a really horrible battle about 3 years ago between the police and some university students. The idea of the poem is that the finest young students from the University of San Carlos and a lot of the...
Oh, did I blow it? I thought I'd move around. What's wrong? You move around the cafe, man.
I don't know, yeah. Okay. The idea of that poem, to give kind of a little thing to it, is that 6th Avenue I mentioned in the poem is a place where a young student who had been president of the student body of San Carlos University, a really brilliant young student, had been killed by supposedly a group of terrorists, unidentified terrorists. And the government, it was actually the act of the government, a deliberate act of this American-supported government, see? And they kind of get rid of their young, bright students because they're the ones who think, they're the ones who see the crap that's going on, and they're the people who will make the changes. So they go one step further than a lot of countries that oppress their people. Rather than waiting for the rallies and for the rebellion, they kind of go in beforehand and take care of it, while it's emerging. They kind of nip it in the bud. There are, people being killed every day in Guatemala. We hear about El Salvador and other parts of the world, but it's happening there. In the Mayan highlands, in Guatemala City I'm writing about, it's happening every day. That's why I don't say it in the book, but kind of a little thought I had is that Coca-Cola kills. See, it's a corporation that kind of is spread all over like a horrible octopus all over that beautiful green land, and it's killing people. And I don't mean to be self-righteous, I'm just being real. It's what I saw, it's what I experienced, and that's what a poet does, see? So that the journalism is in my voice as I talk outside of the poem. The poem is the interior music, which tries to bring in the love, but when you're outside of the poem, you can afford to stand on the soapbox, which is what I just did in the cafe.
I stumbled on Adonis's A Time Between Ashes and Roses. Here he is, this Syrian poet, and he has this long poem on Manhattan. New York, I squeeze you between word and a word. I grasp you and roll you. I write you and erase you. Hot, cold, in between. Awake, asleep, in between. I crouch above you and I sigh. I walk in front of you and reach you. How to walk behind. I pulverize you within my eyes. I really like that. I pulverized you within my eyes. There's this big litany on New York, and suddenly, wow. And the eyes are a witness. The eyes are a recording device. The eyes are a very big part of our memory machine because it gives us the image to put into the memory. And that he's using the eyes so actively, And I can't help when I'm reading this thinking of Garcia Lorca's The Poet in New York. And that great ode to New York City, to Harlem. Harlem's in Adonis's poem. And of course Adonis is writing in the Arabic. There's the Arabic script. Grotesque terrain. What does man do in the primordial shrine? He runs and rubs rock together for a spark and hopes to preserve his place in line. He hammers at night while asleep on promises of hard work and mercy. He goes deep into the shrine and hopes to preserve his place in line. How does the hunter hold his head high? He stalks the bear and steps beneath heaven's great bare tracks in an afternoon late, then waits a moment The forest is still, the cry of a comrade, human eyes. We hear the branches snapping, whirlwind awakening. The gods say, go on ahead, do not linger for long, or the prize is lost. He needs to bend cosmic dust. He has to conjure forth primordial slime. The blossoms radiate. Patience. A man learns forbearance. He hungers for his kind. A bear paces feverishly in his mind. How's that?
It was great.
What do you think of the?
Is that one you wrote this morning?
No, it's a few months old.
Okay.
What do you think?
That's great.
Could read it maybe.
Yeah.
You know, it's you and Scrivani were talking about, most of George said it too, that don't do too long. But on the other hand, if you start with several small ones, that'll prepare people, and then you can get a little longer. David lay dying in his bed. Julie sent me in. I said, you are sailing on air. I told him my father fell from the clouds without a prayer. It's better to listen to God than be scattered everywhere. Is death happy? Do we go to another place? How about the mind, dude? Blood in your body, deadly. Go fuck a cuckoo clock on shadows of doubt. The knives of night are damaged. House lights barely function. Where is Abbot Kinney Street and a place to eat? To die in, this labyrinth is fine as long as dinner doesn't turn cold. Primal stuff, burying men down. At the very least, I have to face a million burning questions. Thank you very much. Man, you don't want to cut yourself with the scissors. Yeah.
What? Danny was telling me something about that. What exactly?
Oh, I didn't tell you when I took a scissors to the kitchen. And you know, because of the diabetes, I have all fucked up toenails. I've had it for 25 years. And I go in now and then and they cut them, but they were really long, so I was trying to cut it with this kitchen scissors. And of course we use it for food, even though you clean it, the bacteria is on there. And I took a slice of the little toe off, a pretty big slice. It just came right off, and the bacteria from the scissors got on in the skin, and I had blood poisoning all the way up to here. You could see the circle of the red, and all the way up here, you know, right from the little toe. And took 4 days to realize, and I said, Jesse, you better take me to the emergency. The pain was too much. They immediately put me into bed and did intravenous for 2 days, antibiotics. And then they gave me 7 days of antibiotics. Then they sent me to a podiatrist. It still hadn't, all the blood poisoning hadn't gone yet, so she gave me another 12 days of antibiotics. And now we're just waiting for the wound to heal. It's getting there, But a little toe, can you imagine, pinky, it's amazing.
Well, the sickness hasn't left me, don't know why. And if my health does not come back, I'm gonna die. Here comes my ride. It's not that fast and I know why. 'Cause my friends don't drive the Benz, they drive them yellow Datsuns. Hey lady, please don't make me the fool. I'm wearing sleeves on my heart for you. No, I ain't gonna live, and I think that doc knows why. I got morphine in my sleeves, I got some stars in my eyes. I got morphine in my sleeves, got some stars in my eyes. Hey lady, please don't make me the fool. 'Cause Jerry's kid's been betting on this information they got from you. No, I ain't gonna live, but I'll race you to the sun. I can't lose, I'm gonna